Hey guys, welcome to CPR TV Plus, home where we teach CPR, first aid, ACLS, PALS, and much, much more. We have an amazing show for you guys today. Today we have Ivey with us. Benny has an incredible story that we want you all to know. We feel like it's very important. He's basically went from streets to salvation, and this is going to be incredible. Stay tuned. All right, guys, we're back. And like I said before, I'm with Ivey. And
Hello.
Benny has a story to tell. I'm going to let him tell his story, and then, and then we'll go back and forth. I'll ask a few questions, but I'm going to let him tell his story. What's happened? I want to know from where did your journey start?
My journey started in South Jackson. I've always been what I refer to as a product of my environment, right? I come from a long line of drug addicts and outlaws. Well, until I was 9 or 10, I stayed mostly with my grandmother. We called her Granny, and Granny, she kept us shielded from a lot of stuff that our parents did. The weed and the alcohol, that was an everyday thing, you know what I mean? That was normal life where we're from, but she made sure that the cocaine and the crystal meth and the heroin and the opiates and the benzos and all that hard stuff was hidden from us. She kept me in church and in school, and she built in me a solid foundation of the beliefs that I have today. I am a Christian. I believe in the mercy and grace of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And if it wasn't for my granny, then those roots probably never would have been planted, you know, so I really appreciate her. But she died when I was about 9 or 10. And I'm gonna try to make this a short version because I can get long-winded on my story, you know what I mean? She died when I was about 9 or 10, and I moved in with my parents. And I like to let everybody know when I'm telling my story that I've always loved my parents. I always will. They're both gone now, but some things just, the true essence of somebody can't be completely out there unless you're completely honest, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But my parents introduced me to a life of drugs. From the time I was younger until I got older. I mean, when my grandmother died, I moved in with them. I went from making straight A's to barely skating to the 7th grade, and then failing from there on out. The drugs wasn't hidden from me anymore. I remember at 11 years old, my uncle barged in the bathroom on me while I was sitting on the toilet and told me to turn my head. And I turned my head, but he didn't pay attention to me, and I watched him pull out his spoon and his drugs and his needle. I watched him mix it up right there at the sink and insert the needle in his arm. And when he got through, he splashed water on his face and smashed back out the bathroom.
Wow.
Scared me to death, you know what I mean? But from that moment forward, that became normal life around my house. The weed and the alcohol was nothing compared to everything else that started popping up. At 15, I quit school, and I hit the streets with my uncle and my brother, and we broke into houses, robbed drug dealers, just stole anything that wasn't tied down so that my family could smoke crack. And I'm talking about my mom, my dad, my uncles, my aunts, my brother, just my whole family. And from there, it just went downhill. At 15, not only did I become a drug addict at an early age, introduced to crime, the lifestyle, the entire lifestyle of the criminal lifestyle, not just an occasional crime, right?
It was a career criminal, basically.
Exactly, a career criminal. But I also started becoming really intrigued by organizations, gangs. As a kid in Jackson, back in them days, every kid that I knew screamed gangster disciple of vice lord, right? It was the cool thing to do. If you didn't scream all is one or all is well, you was a lame.
Oh, I remember.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Well, from the environment that I'm from, I grabbed that mindset at a young age, and I let it form inside me to become my mentality for life. it's just who I became. At 18, at 18 is when I really got addicted to meth. And from there, it was a snowball effect. My penitentiary, my prison cycle began a little bit after 18, and I began to go to prison. I began to catch charges as an adult. I caught some burglary charges and an aggravated assault charge, and ended up in prison at 21 years old. And from there, I went to prison 4 times, almost a fifth, 11 years total in the custody of the Mississippi Department of Correction. I climbed the ladder of, I got blessed, is what we called it, into an organization by the name of the Simon City Royals back in '99. And from there, I climbed the ranks of that organization. By 2008, I was the highest ranking Simon City Royal in central Mississippi, with over 150 members coming to meetings on the streets. And I thought I hit the big time. You know, coming up the way I did, when I was first introduced to the gangs, organizations is what organization members prefer to be called, but that's a glorified word for the term gang.
Right.
You know what I mean? It first intrigued me because of the family atmosphere, the brotherhood that I thought I saw there. Coming from such a dysfunctional family, the thought of having that family, having that structure, having that brotherhood, that stability, it pulled me in, right? Mm-hmm. Well, whenever I did get actually blessed into the roles later on, I wanted to gain rank. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
So what comes with that when you say gain rank? What's the difference between like somebody that's just coming through the door and somebody that has made it up against the ranks?
That person just coming through the door hadn't paid his dues yet. Mm-hmm. I was royal a long time. When I first got put down royal, I made a point to memorize as much literature as I could, because that's one thing about gaining rank, is having the knowledge of the organization. I memorized 50 pages of Simon City Royal literature in the first month that I got blessed in. And you just climb the ranks. Over time, you become respected for the different things that you do for the nation. You know, most of this was in prison, mm-hmm. You know, so there's no telling how many times I had to put my boots on and carry a knife out on the yard because some of my brothers might have got into some mishaps in another zone or something, or just doing things that other organization members feel like you deserve respect for doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And over time, I became Central Mississippi Regional Captain, the highest ranking royal in Central Mississippi. And like I said, I thought at that time that was my, that's what I was supposed to be.
Right.
Right? We go through life and we think, me personally, you know, I went through life and I thought, well, this is the hand that God dealt me.
Right.
Right? So I have to play this hand the best way I can to win the game. Okay? I didn't learn till later that I feel like we're all put here for a purpose.
That's right.
We're put here for a reason. Okay? And yeah, I have lived, the entire life that I've lived is the life that I was given, right? But it's according to what we do with that life.
That's true.
You know what I mean? God has something planned for each and every one of us to do with the life that He's given us. It's up to us to figure it out. Well, I thought that purpose in life was to be a gang leader and a drug dealer. Why God would give me such a life to live, I didn't know. You know what I mean? I was one of those people, like I said, my grandmother introduced me to Jesus at a young age. But from there, my entire environment changed. So it wasn't any church, it wasn't no talk of God, it was crack smoking and breaking into houses. Mm-hmm. So for a long time, I still believed in God, right? It was in the back of my mind, it was in the back of my consciousness. But I kept doing what I was doing.
Right.
And kept pushing the thoughts of Him to the side. And like most people, if you find yourself in a time of desperation. Any believer, excuse me, not most people, anybody who really believes in God, will find themselves praying only at times of desperation. You know what I mean? Oh, Lord, how am I going to pay this bill? Dear God, please help me pay this. God, please help me make sure I got food on the table.
Right.
Or in my case, Lord, please don't let me get 30 years for breaking into this house. Lord, please don't let me get thrown away, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
And then after he does it, then we put him back on that
we
back
put him
burner.
back on the shelf,
Right.
and then we continue to do what we're doing. And that's how I was all my life. Until 2008. Well, that's when it began. 2008, I got put under investigation by the city of Richland for a RICO charge. A RICO charge is a federal charge placed on individuals who conduct criminal activity while running a criminal organization, and it carries 30 years Fed time. Well, when they put that, they started investigating me. I got locked up on a probation violation that year. And they sent me, anybody who goes to prison in Mississippi has to go to CMCF out there in Pearl, Central Mississippi Correctional Facility.
Yeah,
And that's
I
where
know.
you go, right, that's where you go to get classified. You gotta take a psych test, all these different tests, because they wanna make sure they evaluate you and know that they're putting you in the right facility. Excuse me. Well, while I was there, I got a visit from 2 federal agents from Chicago and a lieutenant from Richland Police Department.
Wow.
And that's when they come and told me about everything. Man, they told me everything. They told me everybody who had rank within the gang, the organization. I had a first lieutenant, a second lieutenant, a chief enforcer, an enforcer department, a treasurer. They knew everybody's name. They knew where everybody lived. They knew, at the time I was selling drugs, they knew who I was getting my drugs from. They knew who I fronted it to. They knew how much I sold my drugs for. They told me outfits that I wore to the drug man house.
Wow.
Right? Well, then they showed me some signed statements from some of those brothers that I considered my inner circle, I guess.
Right, your
You know,
family.
my family. That, well, first off, it broke my heart, okay? Sure, I was selling dope. I was doing dope every day. I run the roads with this organization, but it's the only life that I knew. I never knew any other life. I never knew I didn't know how to open a bank account. I never had a driver's license. I got my driver's license for the first time at 39 years old.
Oh, okay. Somebody beat me. 'Cause I got mine at like 27.
Yes, I got you.
So you got me, okay.
But it's because I was never taught basic life skills. You know, I mean, that was just never important around my household. So whenever back to the story. Let me get back to the story.
Okay.
So the feds put me under investigation. Well, all I ever saw myself being was a drug addict and a gang member, so that broke my heart. I felt betrayed. I felt slapped in the face, anger, sadness, all these emotions wrapped up in one. And one thing that was obvious was the fact that I just couldn't trust the people that I was around anymore. So I was forced to step away from the organization before I ended up with a 30-year prison sentence. And at the time, I thought that I was mad about having to do that. I was angry that I had to step away from something that I worked so hard to build. But it was a blessing in disguise. You know, that the way it happened is one of what I call God moments.
Right.
A God moment is something that I call when God intervenes in your life to be sure that His will be done in your life. You know what I mean? And that's what that was, man. He made sure that was the first step of putting me on the path of the purpose that He has for me, was getting me away from the organization. Now, I got out of prison after that probation violation, and I no longer screamed royal. I no longer claimed affiliation with the organization, but I was still a drug addict.
Okay.
So my quality of life didn't change. I was an intravenous meth addict from the time I was 18 until I was 34. So I was still in the middle of that, still deep down in the pits of addiction. So I got out of prison, and to fill the void, I guess, that was left by removing me from the organization, I saturated my life with meth. every day, all day, every day, all day. I lived that life all of 2009, all of 2010 until November 23rd, 2010. That's the last day I ever laid eyes on crystal meth.
So what was the breaking point? Oh, Lord, don't stop. So what was the breaking point? The bottom line that says, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I have to do something else or I'm going to die.
I got locked up November 23rd, 2010. Another one of those God moments. And sometimes whenever you look back on them, they're so obvious. It's like God just slapped you in the face. It's like, hey, listen, this is what you need to be doing. I got arrested that day for a charge that was not mine. It was a charge that locked me up for a while until all the evidence could be run through. And what had happened was, and this is just how God works, man. So I'd have been to prison 4 times. Another conviction for me would have been a habitual offender, and I would have never got out. Well, me and a buddy of mine gave a girl a ride from Jackson to Richland, to Jackson, Mississippi to Richland, Mississippi, to pick another girl up. I'm gonna call them girl 1 and girl 2.
Okay.
Okay? Well, me and my buddy did not know that all night the night before these 2 girls had made a drug deal over the phone. No. We were giving her a ride to pick the girl up, right? No drugs were mentioned. We never talked about drugs. But we've been up all night on meth. Now, we were all high. So when I say, I used to tell my story and say that I got arrested for a charge that I was innocent of.
Right.
But I was not innocent. If you're living in that environment day in and day out, then you're not innocent of the things that go on around you, the things that you allow in your presence, right? But I did not do that charge, right? So the charge was this. We give girl 1 a ride to Richland to pick girl 2 up. She gets out, they do their swap, and they do their swap and come back, get out in the truck. And we pull out of the neighborhood and got swarmed by Rankin County Sheriff's Department. Girl 1, and these girls have known each other for a long time. This is the loyalty there is in the dope game, and what people call the dope game. Girl 1 and girl 2 have known each other forever. Girl 1 had decided that she needed some money so that her and her boyfriend could cook up some more dope that day. So she was taking rock salt and passing it off as meth. You know, rock salt, that's something that you make ice cream with or something you can buy at Kroger, you know what I mean? So she was ripping her off. The same time, girl 2 was wearing a wire to set girl 1 up with the police.
Golly.
Right? That was God's way of getting me off the streets. So when we got ambushed by the police, we got locked up, we got sent back to Rankin County Jail. I got sent back to Rankin County Jail. And I had enough, man. I slept. The first 2 days I was there, I slept. Because I've been running the roads for months doing dope every day. Just running the roads, staying up for a week, sleep for 2 days. Stay up for a week, sleep for 2 days. That's the cycle of a meth addict. So I slept a couple days in the county jail, and I woke up. I got up off the top rack and jumped down to the floor, and I walked over to the sink and splashed water on my face. And I stepped to the side, and I looked out. And in Rankin County Jail, as in most jails I've been to, there's a little rectangular shaped window, about 4 inches wide, about 3 feet tall. And I looked out that window, and I was on the top floor, and I could see the day room. Day room with all the guys in the red and white striped suits sitting at the tables, watching TV, playing cards. And that scenery, that's the scenery that I have seen for most of my life. You know, my juvenile years, all my juvenile years was in the detention center, Oakley Training School. I didn't really have a childhood. Then I got older and started going to prison. So that's the scenery that I've seen forever. And when I looked out that window and I looked across that zone, something in me broke right then. I realized in that moment that I did not want to live that life anymore. Mm-hmm. I thought that I would never see the light of day again, okay? You got to understand, when they arrested us that day, I didn't know what I was being arrested for. Me and my buddy didn't know what had happened. We didn't know what went down until we got to the jail, and they told us that we were under arrest for possession conspiracy to possess a controlled substance, conspiracy to deliver a controlled substance, and possession with intent. Because girl two still had the fake dope in her pocket that they thought was real dope, and she was in the truck with us. So they charged everybody in the truck with that possession. So in my mind, they caught us with dope. That's all I know. They caught us with dope. I knew it was obvious that girl two had to have done something. I just didn't know, I didn't understand what, but I thought that I would never see the light of day again. I thought that that would be my habitual charge. And I didn't want that, man. That fear of being thrown away for the rest of my life, God knew that I needed that fear. God knew that I needed to feel that fear. And I got on my knees right then in that cell and I begged God. I cried. I begged him to take the addiction from me. I begged him to remove me from the environment that I've been living in. I begged him for one more chance at life. And I promised him that if he gave me that chance, I'd never let him down. Well, I stayed in the county there. He didn't snap his fingers and let me out. That ain't how it works.
Right, yeah,
Right?
you got to deal with that a little bit.
You got to deal with it a little bit. I stayed in the county 8 months. Well, while I was there, I began to write my life story. I began to just write my life down on paper. And as of now, I've handwritten like 1,200 pages. I'm on the verge of finishing my manuscript. But the more I wrote, the more clearly that I could see that, first of all, God has always had my back. I've been in some hairy situations, Alexis. I've been in the middle of big bangings in Greene County and Parchman, like the one that just went down a couple weeks ago. You know what I mean? I've been in some serious situations. I've been in a bathroom shooting dope. Just never know. You know, he's kept his hand on me. He's kept me alive. He's kept me safe. He's been there the whole time, and it was just obvious the more that I wrote. But also, the more that I wrote, I could see that it was up to me to break that cycle.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Everybody in my family were drug addicts and outlaws, bikers, organization members. Everybody in my family, man. And I could continue to live that life and go down the path that they've gone down and die or be in prison, or I could do something about it. And I decided to do something about it. I stayed there in the county 8 months, and for the first time in my life, Rankin County sent me to drug treatment, right? I've been to prison 4 times, and I've never been offered rehab. They sent me to prison every time.
Oh, wow.
This is my 5th time, and it was all about rehab, because God began working in my life. I firmly believe that. So July 2011, I got sent to treatment in Jackson, rehab called Common Bond Treatment Center. And there I just began to take the proper steps that I needed to take to start building a life for myself. And I mean build a life for myself. I didn't have nothing. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a house, I didn't have a home, I barely had clothes. So I was starting 100% from scratch. Didn't have a driver's license, never had a bank account, a steady job, didn't know how to get up and go to work every day. You know, people take for granted that that's just automatic, that people know how to do that, and it's not.
But in a way, you kind of did. So the way that I'm hearing you talk about it, as far as being in this gang, and you're going up on these different levels, and then you make regional manager, I had no idea there was even that much involved as far as ranks and regional this. I mean, that's basically the same thing you would do if you worked.
You're right.
And you went up the ranks. So
Yeah.
It's the same principle, but just, you know, just dealing with criminal activity.
Right. I think it was the whole, what I had to get used to and what I had to teach myself to do was the actual getting up and going to work.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? It's a whole lot different from kick back, getting up when you want to, smoke some blunts, just do this, do that to gain rank in an organization. But whenever you have to actually get up and go to work and learn something, because somebody like me with no education, I dropped out in 9th grade and got a GED. And the only education I had from that moment forward was the Mississippi Department of Corrections. You know what I mean? So, as a child, my parents, I broke into houses so that they could smoke crack, but my dad did teach me how to read a tape measure, and he did teach me how to use a miter saw and how to run crown molding in baseboards, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, he began in me what I needed to learn my way around a job site. So when I got to rehab, I had to, now, and keep in mind, now I was a kid when my dad taught me all this. So I'd done a little bit of it throughout my life whenever I got out of prison here or there, but I might have kept a job a month. Then I'd lose the job and I'd start slanging dope. Mm-hmm. So that's all I knew.
Quick money.
Quick money that never lasts. So in rehab, I met my wife, Christina. I met my wife and her daughter, Natalie. And I just began to, like I said, make the proper steps to build a life for myself. I had to actually kind of, what I called it, wooing her.
Indeed,
she wouldn't. Yeah, she wouldn't. Look at me, look. I mean, I'm covered in tattoos. You know, I'm obvious. Most people around Jackson know who I am when it comes to organization, gangs. And here I am in a drug treatment center trying to woo this pretty blonde medical student, and she wasn't having it. But I won.
Indeed, you did. You're married, so yeah, you won.
So I met her, and I got a job. I got these guys, gave me a job in rehab, gave me a shot. That was October 2011. Here it is, January 2020, and I got the same job, and I'm a co-partner of the business. So my life completely turned around when I got to that treatment center, and I made a promise to God that I would never let him down, and I meant it. And he knew that I meant it.
So what I'm seeing is basically you've gone full circle. From your grandmother teaching you about God to you going through the whole thing with the gang, and you went there basically looking for family, just to find out that the loyalty you thought you had there, everything was basically a big deception.
Right.
And so when you got past that, you've gone right back around to what your grandma taught you.
That's right.
So that's where we are now.
That's where we are
now. We're living in your, what I want to call it? Your roots.
Right.
Basically. So you've come all the way back to your roots, and you're doing what grandma said.
That's right. That's right.
And we all know grandma's always right. I know mine was.
I promise you, mine was right.
Bless her, Lord. She, especially when it comes to that, because that's where I got it from.
Yeah.
And at that time, my family, we weren't going to church, but I would always go with her. Yeah. And so even when I stopped going to church and I was out in the streets and doing all the stuff I was doing, at the end of the day, it always came back to what grandma taught me about God, and then starting to seek him for myself. So I definitely understand. I understand that concept. I mean, that's crazy, but that's God, and that's how he works.
That's right.
And when you have that basic understanding of who he is, we go out there and we do what we do, and we go in the streets and we ask for forgiveness, and we do it again and ask for forgiveness. But at some point, he's going to say, "Hey, it's time to come back.
It's time to come on for real."
And it's time to put in that work. And then so now you're at the point with what you're doing a lot of things as far as prison reform, strong arms. So let's talk about that.
Okay, so I got out of rehab, just to lead up to it. Mm-hmm. Got out of rehab, me and Christina, we got a house in Pearl. I went to court Valentine's Day of 2013 and legally adopted my daughter, Natalie. And from there, man, I just worked. I worked, and I built my credit up. Christina built her credit up. We ended up being able to buy a house. We bought us a house out in Florence. And it's just like cards were just that's those same cards that I said God dealt me this life. He did deal me this life, because now those cards are falling right into place exactly where He wanted them to. You know what I mean? Well, like I said, I began writing a book about my life story. Well, I put it on Facebook a couple years ago, just to kind of get an idea from some people, you know, what's my next step? Anybody got any connections? What do I do about getting it published? And this lady named Donna Ladd, she runs the Jackson Free Press in Jackson. She contacted me, and she wanted to do some stories on me. So she did one story on me through a publication called The Guardian. It was entitled, what was that entitled? I don't know, I can't remember. But it was in The Guardian. It was about the rise of white gangs in the South. That's what it was about.
Okay.
Well, she did that story on me, and then she did another local one in the Jackson Free Press called Brotherhood of Destruction, A Journey Through Hell and Back. And those stories caught the attention of some people, caught the attention of a CNN crew, producing crew, Part 2 Pictures, and they came down and recorded me and featured me in an episode of This Is Life, hosted by Lisa Ling. They also got the attention of some people in Jackson. Mayor Lumumba, he's the mayor in Jackson. He's got a sister by the name of Rukia Lumumba. And Rukia is the director. Rukia and Tarun Moore, they are the co-directors of the People's Advocacy Institute in Jackson, which is really, it's an organization. It's a voice for people who feel like they have no voice, okay? They do a lot of activist work. They do a lot of like the prison reform. They were doing a lot of electoral justice work and stuff like that. Well, anyway, I had told Donna Ladd that I wanted to get a group together. I wanted to get a group of men and women together, because I felt like God put it on my heart, put the mission on my heart to do something with our youth, our young people. Because I can see myself as a 15-year-old sitting in the Hinds County Detention Center on burglary charges on my way to Oakley Training School. And I just wonder if somebody would have been able to grab my attention back then, would I have lived the life that I've lived? And on that same thought, like I said, I think I lived my life for a purpose.
That's right.
But I think that purpose is to keep other kids from living this life. Okay. So I told Don I wanted to get a group together. I wanted some retired organization members. I wanted retired drug dealers. I want people that had been to prison and been able to turn their lives around, that wanted to go with me places and talk to kids. And I had no idea how to get anything like that started. I think a lot of people in our country want to do things, but have no idea how to get started.
That's right.
You know, we don't know how to, you know, you see stuff, oh man, I wish I could help those people, but what do I do? And I was in that category, and that's in that mind frame. But I knew Donna, she owned a publication in Jackson, and she's interviewed thousands of people, and she knew people, she had connections, so I took it to her and asked her if she might could hook me up with some people that might have something like that in mind. And I never knew that there was an actual entity in New York and Chicago, New Orleans, just a bunch of different cities across the country called Credible Messengers. Okay? And what Credible Messengers is other men and women like me who have lived those lives, been down them dark roads, been in those pits is what I call them. But they've been able to climb out of those pits, and they want to turn around and lend a helping hand to the next people climbing out, right? So that's what a credible messenger is. Well, come to find out, it's just like I said, God was turning those cards over at just the right time. You know what I mean? Because I took that to Donna, and it wasn't a couple weeks later, I get an invite from Rukia Lumumba to attend a closed city hall meeting in Jackson. And there was me and about 15 other people there, and I was included with a group of people known for wanting to make changes in the community. And I sat there at first in that city hall in awe at the fact that I would be included in a group like that.
Right.
I've always been looked at as this drug addict, gang member, white trash, good for nothing. But now here I am sitting in the city hall with a group of people that are known for helping the community. And we heard some people talk that day, introduce this stuff they got in New York called Cure Violence. And it's looking at violence through a different lens. Now let me backtrack just a little bit. And I'm saying this for the audience because we know how bad Jackson's gotten, okay? Jackson is this is for anybody that's not from around here. YouTube is international, you know, so anybody will watch this. But Jackson, our capital city, has gotten so bad. Last year, there was 84 murders in Jackson. So everybody's shuffling for solutions. The police, they wanted to patrol more, right? They wanted to shake some people down and stuff, but has that ever worked?
No.
That's never worked. It just makes things worse. It builds animosity and makes things worse. But don't get me wrong, don't misunderstand. There's some people at the Jackson Police Department who agree with this and they're on board. The chief, the assistant chief, they're on board with us with what I'm about to talk about. So there's a program in place in New York and in Chicago called Cure Violence, and it's run by credible messengers, and it looks at violence through a different lens. It looks at violence as a health epidemic. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is because Cure Violence was founded by a man by the name of Dr. Gary Slutkin. And he's a renowned epidemiologist. He studied in Africa for years and years, studied all the bad diseases over there, right? Well, during an epidemic, there's 3 stages to stopping an epidemic. All right? One is detecting, all right? The second step, detecting the source. The second is interrupting the source, right, stopping the transmission. And the third step is changing social norms with the community so that infection is no longer transmitted from person to person. So if you look at violence the same way, violence is transmitted. Most people that commit violence learn violence. It's learned from what you see throughout your life, okay? And Cure Violence model, what it does is uses credible messengers as violence interrupters. All right. Now, a violence interrupter is a credible messenger that is from the particular neighborhood that is experiencing the most violence. Okay. Every neighborhood, every community is someone that people look up to. Okay. There's somebody in them communities that have been down in credible messengers, been there and done that, got the T-shirt, got the hat, been able to leave that life and make something out of themselves. And those are the people that we want as violence interrupters, that are influential, that they're bold in their speaking, that they get people to see the error in their ways. Well, so a violence interrupter is people that are in the communities that can mediate violence. They're in the communities. They know when something's about to happen. And contrary to popular belief, the killings in Jackson are not gang related.
I agree.
They are not. The research shows that 99% of them is interpersonal conflicts. Somebody's at the club, they get to arguing, somebody stepped on somebody's shoes, they see them on the next street, ride by, pop a cap on them.
Yes,
there's no value for human life, you know? Well, those credible messengers, those violence interrupters that are in the communities, they hear about these beefs before they become violent, right? They're in the streets. They got their ears to the ground. You know what I mean? They're paying attention, and they can stop the violence before it happens. You know, hey man, well come on, bro. You got to leave this alone, man. You know what I mean? Let's go talk to bro. We got to, you know, and if it's an influential speaker, then people will listen to him. The program has proved effective, dropping the violence rate. I think it was, I want to say 69% in one neighborhood in New York. And that's big.
That is big.
It's really big. So we're bringing that here to Jackson. Our program is called the Strong Arms of Jackson. Okay, myself and Rukia and Tarun are the co-chairs. We're the co-directors of the Strong Arms of Jackson. We have some other men and women on board with us. We have well, we have a planning committee that consists of probably 50, 60 people, but we have a core group of credible messengers. We have John Knight, Albert Coleman, Marcus and Trayana Landfair. We have Valencia Robinson, Desmion Thomas, Jason Page. These are all people that have been in organizations, been in prison or been on drugs, but have learned the error in their ways, and they're living the right life, and they want to help other people not to make those same mistakes. So we're going to be implemented here really soon. By February, we'll be working. You know, I've been, for the past 2 years, I've been going to the Rankin County Juvenile Detention Center, working with those kids there, those boys there.
Right.
And we'll be starting at Henley Young Youth Detention Center here in February in Jackson, working with those young people there. I started this past week at Brentwood Behavioral Center in Flowood, and when I went in there and spent a night with those young men, the difference between those young men and the ones in Rankin County Juvenile Center is in the Rankin County Juvenile Center, I go every Thursday, and I go in one week and I'll see some familiar faces and see some I don't know. The next week it's a whole different crew because they're in and out.
Right.
In and out. Well, at Brentwood, when they go there, they're there for up to 8 months.
Yes.
So you can see the difference in eagerness. I saw a room full of eager young men that did not want to be there, that wanted to see a better life, wanted to know how to pursue that better life. And that's the whole mission for our Credible Messenger program. You know, we want to change social norms, maybe build a new peer group, show these young people that they don't have to be products of their environment, that they can choose to live a better life, and show them how to get that. With our program, we'll be mentoring, but we got to have a big budget. Rukia is wanting a big budget. She knows how to plant programs. She's the lawyer. She's the brains. You know what I mean? And because we're going to have resources in place to where if we interrupt someone's life, we can help them.
That's right.
We ain't going to sit here and say, well, you need to go to school. You need to get a job. We're going to say, well, here, we're going to help you get in this school. Here, let's help you get this job. Let's help you do that. Because without those resources, then we're just talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what the Strong Arms of Jackson is going to be.
Yeah, and that's happening starting maybe next month.
Yeah, well, we've already started. And I just posted, if you look on my wall on Facebook, I just posted a flyer for our first Strong Arms of Jackson community meeting, January 28th at the COFO building in Jackson at 6 p.m., open to the public. Okay. Everybody's welcome to come and see what we got going on. We're going to concentrate on one certain neighborhood to begin with, just to go canvass the neighborhood. We need public support. We need community support because this is going to be a community-based program, okay? We want to keep the police out the neighborhood, okay? When I say that, well, I don't mean to say that, I don't mean it to sound, by the time the police get there, something bad's done happened. Let me put it that way. It's happened already, right? When the police get there, somebody done been shot, something done bad has done happened. We want to stop it before the police have to come to the neighborhood, right? So we're going to start in one neighborhood, getting the public support. We're going to have we have scheduled for February 9th a meet, greet, and eat barbecue at Grove Park in Jackson. Okay. I say scheduled because I hope it don't get changed, weather or anything permitted. You know what I mean? But it's going to be a community-based program, man, and it's all hands on deck. So everybody's invited to the meetings. Everybody's input is valuable because no one person has the answer for an epidemic like that. Yeah, and it's going to take everybody. That's the big thing about it. It's going to take the community. It's going to take the community to bring everything back together. You can't just rely on the government or rely on the police. Everybody has to do their part. That's right. And a lot of that, you know, it's just kind of respecting and loving each other. That's right. Because without that, then you have all the anger and the violence and the little malicious stuff, like you mentioned about somebody stepping on somebody's shoe. Just little dumb stuff. You know, that's crazy because all you have to say is, hey, man, excuse me. You know, because 99.9% of the time, it's not on purpose. That's right. You know, especially if you're in those environments, whether it's a club or somewhere crowded. We understand you spent a lot of money on your shoes. They get scuffed. They're shoes. Don't wear them to a tight club. Don't hold them. You know, so I get it, but you can't expect to go in those type of places and
stuff like that don't happen. But, you know, we
right.
have to be more forgiving of each other as far as the little stuff, you know.
That's right. That's right. And it takes me back to the old saying that it takes a village to raise a child.
Indeed.
This day and age, we got some young people that have no value for human life. So you have people in the neighborhoods that are scared to even put their nose in other people's business. I remember when I was a kid, I was raised how I was raised. It just is what it is, right? But like I said, until I was 9 or 10, I was mostly at my grandmother's. And where she lived at, there was a neighborhood behind Metro Center in Jackson. And better not nobody in that neighborhood better saw me doing nothing wrong.
Yeah, that's how I grew
Because
up.
they finna snatch me up, take me to Granny's. They might have put a belt on me.
Yeah.
Because that was in the days of the village raising the child. This day and age, people are scared to do that.
That's right.
Because they don't know what's going to happen. We want to get it back to those days. Get it back to where the whole neighborhood is involved in everybody's life. We don't have to worry about violence. We don't have to worry about somebody shooting somebody. You know what I mean? Because that's not how we're supposed to be living.
That is true. Where are we? We're 46 minutes?
We've been talking that long?
We've been talking. I mean, you know, that's just what it is. It gets good like that sometimes.
Lord,
I'm
have
hoping. All right. So, well, guys, that is all we have for y'all today. I'm so glad Benny came through. I got a lot of information that I didn't know about, especially about gangs and different things like that. And so I'm hoping that this message I'm hoping this message reaches a lot of people, and y'all get a better understanding of the type of life that he's lived and people like him live. Because I know I have. You know, I've never been in a gang. I've been, you know, I heard about them and I knew, you know, what kind of gangs there were. But as far as like just the intricateness of it all and the levels and the hierarchy and all of that, I had no idea. So don't forget to like, subscribe. Let me do that again. I know. What's the other one? Like, subscribe, and what else?
And share.
That's what it is. So, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this station that is CPR TV Plus, and we will see you guys next time.